Hi, everybody. This is Metallic Penguin. I need you to think of this sort of like a podcast that has a visual component of Age of Wonders 4 over top of it. And that's because YouTube pretty much wants me to have a visual component to what I'm talking about. But this is a sort of a response video to a fellow YouTuber called Battle Mode. He was talking about whether or not we should make 4X games, or I guess they should make 4X games. And I thought, well, that's right up my alley, so I thought I'd respond to it. Hello, everybody. This is Metallic Penguin. This is kind of a response video to Battle Mode's proposition that they should quit selling, or I guess making, 4X games. 4X is a genre. Gary Gygax made the term 4X in an article where he was talking about the original Masters of Orion, in which he said explore, expand, exploit, exterminate, the 4Xs. It was kind of a play on words for the adult entertainment trope of triple X. And right there we should say that. Today, when I think about a 4X, you think about what they call a map game. So you're looking at a map. Be that map Stellaris, or Europa Universalis 4, or Hearts of Iron, or, say, Master of Magic, to take it away from the Paradox trope. Battle Mode was talking about how he felt that the conventions of the 4X genre essentially were holding back 4X games. And I think he's right. A lot of the features of 4X, common in a 4X game, I should say, feel bolted on, such as diplomacy. Diplomacy is just always, I feel like, in a 4X game, whether it needs to be or not. Look, for example, at Civilization, right? When you look at Civ 6, why is diplomacy even there? Why do we have to go through sort of the formal rigmarole of declaring war? Well, one of the reasons from a design standpoint, I would think, is it builds tension. And you want to build tension, especially in a single-player game, because essentially what are you doing? You're sitting alone in a room. So one of the jobs of the game developer, I would say, is the game developer has to assure the person on some level that they are in fact having a good time. And the way we do that, or I'm not a developer, but the way they do that is they constantly build tension and they create problems and so on. But I mean, if you look at history, you had wars that happened where diplomacy was not really involved. And this just happens all the time. And that's just one example. Here's another example. And he talked about how the 4X genre lends itself to a certain type of game, and how perhaps that type of game is played out by people who are not of an age. Because remember, if you're, some of us have been playing computer games almost since computer games have been a thing, right? And I would assume that's especially true. Like, if you remember the original Civilization game, you're probably old enough to have played games at least in the 80s. And other than a few games, be it SimCity or maybe The Sims, the spiritual successor to SimCity, or any of SimCity's other successors like City Skylines, most computer games have some type of violent element. And therefore, that builds the tension and all this. And that's, I would argue, honestly, that's why the violent element is there, to build the tension, to keep the person engaged, to keep the person interested, etc. Otherwise, it just becomes a television show. But I say that, but story games are a thing now. And they've always been a thing, but they're a thing now. But also, when you look at something like Baldur's Gate 3, with Baldur's Gate 3, you can kind of see like the edges of what I call gaming's new frontier, or at least maybe something, this untapped element where it becomes more of an interactive movie. Where most games you want to power through the cutscene, okay, because you just want to get back to the action. With Baldur's Gate 3, you're rewarded with a cutscene. I would actually say the cutscene is the reason you play. The cinematic is the reason you play. So you think about, 4X games and why, for example, there's all these companies out here that are cramming 4X elements. Well, frankly, it's because Civilization, not Civ 7, but Civ 6, is one of the most played computer games ever. And believe it or not, and this is a Stellaris-focused channel right now, but believe it or not, Stellaris is actually one of the more played computer games. It has a daily player base sometimes verging on 20,000 people a day, which again, in a world where 76% or 66%, it's somewhere between 66 and 76% of adults in America play computer games or video games. So in that world, believe it or not, 20,000 people a day playing a single game is actually a lot of people playing a single game. So one of the things I think is you have a couple of games, maybe a handful of games in the 4X genre that have pretty big audiences. And then you have very small audiences for even newer games underneath that. And kind of Battle Mode was talking about why he thinks that is. And he thinks it's because the mechanics are frozen in a time when computers were newer. And I kind of agree with that. How do you fix it? What's a different type of 4X game? Well, why does a game have to be a 4X? Okay. Well, frankly, because, when you're sitting on a Steam account, when you're sitting on the Steam page, and you've never heard of a game, and you're thinking, what kind of game do I like? You type in 4X, but for me, I went even deeper than that, even more basic than that. Like, I got into gaming again as an adult because I was talking to my cousin over the phone, and he was telling me about Civilization, and I don't even think I knew about Steam at the time. I mean, I'd heard of it, but I'd never used it. And I went online and bought Civilization. I think it was on sale, and played it. Civ 6, played it and thought it was cool, and so then, like, he told me after the next day or three, he told me, like, what that was a 4X game, and he said, explore, expand, exploit, exterminate. And I remember him telling me that. I remember asking what the 4Xs were, and he told me what they were. So then I said, well, what's other games like that? And he described Stellaris, but he didn't know the name of it. And I literally remember going into Google, and I literally remember typing, games where you build your own spaceship, and one of them was Stellaris. and I played it, and I bought it and played it, and I think a lot of the 4X, a lot of my exposure to 4X basically comes from two games currently, which is Civ and Stellaris. And people say, well, Civ is not a good 4X game. Well, one of the reasons I think it might be lacking in the 4X department is because I don't think of it as a 4X game at all. I think of it as a space opera simulator. And people can, give Paradox a hard time all they want for, their DLC policy. Okay? But it allows you to play as deep of a space opera simulator as you want to play. And it's only the marketing people, it's only the Steam people that are trying to sell these games that call it a 4X game. And yeah, it has significant 4X elements, but it also has a lot of bloat, which I think detract from the 4X sort of genre. But now, how would I make it better? And this is what I want to respond to. I would like to have cinematics. I would like to have, so like the Knights of the Toxic God, right? Right now there's a bunch of text boxes. And I don't want a Stellaris 2, and I'm going to be vocal about that. I do not want Stellaris 2. I'm happy to have Stellaris, with all the bloat and all of this and all of that and blah, blah, blah. But the thing I want is like the next sort of thing. Instead of having the text boxes that tell you about the Knights of the Toxic God, have cinematics and have them voiced, sort of like a Baldur's Gate RPG style. And yeah, okay, that'd be heavy on your hard drive for sure. But, and I don't know. And the other thing he talked about was sort of why we use the RPG, or not RPG, why we use the 4X label. Well, why do we use the RPG label? Why do you meet people that say I'm an RPG fan or I'm a 4X fan? And I've met a lot more people that say I'm an RPG fan than that say I'm a 4X fan, in spite of the fact that by the numbers there are more people playing Civ and more people playing Crusader Kings and more people playing, Stellaris than there are playing a lot of RPGs not named Baldur's Gate 3. And why do I think that is? Because of YouTube. I think YouTube is kind of the glue that keeps a lot of sort of the community, the gaming community in general, and kind of the 4X and RPG community as a whole, specifically, together. And I know that's partly by design. And one of the differences, I think, one of the things I think a lot of people who play, for example, Stellaris, don't understand is that because Paradox doesn't really have a conventional marketing budget, because you're not running around society seeing, Stellaris t-shirts or Baldur's Gate t-shirts or Civilization t-shirts, you don't know that there's other players out there. And because it's maybe a 1 or 2 player game, you don't know how many people play Stellaris. You don't know how many people play, Civilization. You don't know how many people play Europa Universalis 4. Like, here's something that I know because I've looked on the Steam database. Believe it or not, like there's 20,000 people playing Stellaris sometimes. There's way more people playing Hearts of Iron 4. And there's way more people playing, like, Crusader Kings 3. I would have thought that, honestly, that Stellaris was the flagship game of Paradox. Oh, no. No, that game, for sure, would either be Hearts of Iron 4 or Crusader Kings 3. And here we all are, just on Facebook or Reddit or wherever we are, right? But so that's part of the deal, is there's not really, like, you don't go around. It's not like with sports where you see like jerseys. You see jerseys out and around or whatever. You don't really see a lot of t-shirts about video games, at least on adults. And so therefore, even though like 66% of people can be playing video games, we don't really see each other, and we don't know what game is what. And one of the things Battle Mode talked about specifically that I wanted to actually say that I totally agree on is, he said that it was kind of sad to him that there were all these people that were going in Reddit and they were asking in the 4X subreddit, what other games can I play other than Stellaris? Either because a lot of people in the Stellaris community are sort of infected with this idea that Stellaris is going to go away, or they don't know other games to play. And I think this gets back to the marketing problem. I think because these games these studios don't really have conventional marketing budget, and because like we live in a more fragmented media landscape than we ever lived in before, we don't really know. Like, you could have a huge community of games out here, and like nobody who's not in that community knows about that game or knows about other adjacent games. Like, one of the things I know because I run this channel is there's a lot of people playing Warhammer games. And the reason I know that is because some of my videos are being recommended by other videos in other communities playing Warhammer. And I actually found out about 2 Warhammer games specifically because somebody made videos about it, and my videos were being referred to people after those videos. Which got me to thinking, like, when we were kids, when I was a kid, the different television networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, they would have they used to have Saturday morning cartoons, okay? Well, they used to have like these shows in the fall that would tell the kids what the new Saturday morning cartoons would be. I guarantee you most people that play these games, if in fact 70% of Americans, or 66, whatever it is, percent of Americans are playing computer games, I guarantee you most people don't know, for example, that there are huge gaming conventions that broadcast on YouTube and Twitch and whatever else. And if indeed 70-something% of Americans are playing video games, I would suggest that there's a whole lot of people who don't know Twitch exists. Or if they do, they're watching like 6 games or 7 games. Right? So I think part of our problem is who is the gaming community, right? Which essentially is a huge swath of Americans, essentially. All right. So what is our problem? Our problem is there isn't this unifying ecosystem that says, not only is this normal and okay, not only is it okay for adults to play video games, but also we don't have there isn't this basically marketing infrastructure in common to tell us about other communities. So you get situations where people are either tired of Stellaris or they're so afraid of Stellaris dying that they quit playing Stellaris. And there was one thing I saw on Reddit that I thought was really sad. There was somebody who said she was a girl. Reddit is anonymous. You can't see these people. But there was a person who said she was a girl and she's very disabled and she can't really get out. And she was terrified that because the Saudis bought EA Games, the Sims were going to go away. And she said, well, I don't have anything to live for other than this game. And if the game goes away, I don't know what I'm going to do. And that's really, really sad. And it's sad for a couple of reasons. It's sad because she thinks she doesn't have anything to live for. But it's also sad, and I think this is part of what makes this uncomfortable for people. For the first time in a very long time, maybe forever, a lot of us have our entertainment basically held up by these huge multinational corporations. And because this is organized around commerce, we're depending on basically things like leverage buyouts, and if this studio goes away, will this game go away? And you have modders, you have modders on that are part of gaming communities that are keeping games alive, which on Steam, which that's great and amazing and beautiful. But it's really kind of, that was really sad to me, and it sort of drilled into me that not only is this fun for people to do, not only are these games fun, but right, wrong, good or bad, for a lot of people this is culture. For a lot of people this is interface to a broader culture. And something that I've noticed as an adult that's different from when I was a kid is when I was a kid, you could be an adult and you would see evidence of a youth pop culture just in society, right? So you'd see kids wearing Michael Jordan jerseys, or you'd see kids, having band t-shirts on, or even just if you didn't have any kids, you could still go around and you could see billboards with radio stations that had, music for a younger generation, sort of. I can't remember the last time I've seen a video. I can't remember the last time I've seen a billboard that had a musical act on the billboard for a radio station. I can't remember the last time I saw that. Right? And so the thing I said as an adult was, is all the pop culture for the young people, is it all just discords and games? Do I think that's healthy? No, I don't. And I don't know. And I don't know where this fits into a response video about Battle Mage, Battle Mode. Right? I don't know where this fits into a response video about Battle Mode. But it's kind of where my brain's at. And I was kind of thinking, well, okay, he's got a point, because we're all dependent on Steam showing us these games based on entirely on sales labels that somebody has invented, right? And you, the developer, are trying to shoehorn your game into a pre-existing label that somebody created, right? And by the way, when they created this label, when it was originally created in the early 1980s, it was done tongue-in-cheek and it was done as a joke, right? So therefore, when you have people running around saying, well, I only play RPGs, or I only play CRPGs, or I only play 4Xs, or whatever, first of all, you're denying yourself a lot of games. And second, you're doing that because you're parroting a label that somebody gave you. And I agree with Battle Mode. I honestly think society, needs to start thinking of these games as not just computer games that need to have some sort of element of violence or some sort of element of tension, but sort of like a thing that people can do, like a simulation. I saw a podcast with the developer of Spiderweb Software before I decided to start this channel. And basically, he said that he didn't think we knew what computer games were yet. And the guy who's in charge of Spiderweb Software has been doing this as a job since the early 70s, right? So for him to say that I don't think what a computer game is a thing people understand yet, that's pretty profound if you ask me. I mean, maybe you could have a Sims type of thing, but have it more involved, or I don't know, like I've heard many big creators of different types of games play the Power Wash Simulator, and they love it, and they can't figure out a way to cover it except to tell everybody that they love it, which is partly what covering it is. Anyway, this has been Metallic Penguin, and this is a response to Battle Mode's video about how they should quit making 4X games. Don't forget to like, share, and comment, and do all the YouTube jazz. And I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.